in one category. Now, in terms of, you can actually ship whole containers by air. It's really expensive, but you can do it. You know, and in Las Vegas, they do that a lot if it's full of lobster or really high-priced items. Makes sense, right? Because they don't want it to go off. And they're in special refrigerated containers. So you've got here 4 options, and only 4 options as far as you're concerned with shipping containers. Those are as follows. LCL. Anyone smart knows what that stands for? Correct. Less than container load. You've got 20-foot containers, which we all saw the pictures of earlier, yeah? 40-foot containers and 40-foot high-Q containers. You know, you really need a lot of items. Now, don't try and think, oh, I have to have a 40 high-Q. I think that when you really start to import, you get 20-foot containers and you have 3 or 4 items in the container. Remember consolidation? And what you can do is actually get items from different factories, right, shipped into one consolidated container and then ship that, and then you break it up into little bits when you get to Australia. Okay, that's really, you know, in the short to medium term before you start doing the 40 high Qs of one product, that's really how you're going to play the game. You guys see that? Fantastic. So you want to measure economy and efficiency with cash flow. You don't want to spend all your capital and bring in a 40 high Q when you can bring in a smaller one and have a lot more products. The other thing you need is tariffs, right? The government have certain tariffs on certain goods. Certain goods are protected. One example of that is textiles, clothing, and footwear, also known as TCF. These items are, you know, there's an agreement by 2020. A lot of these tariffs will be phased out. But right now, you've got to be careful and factor those into your costings. So there are certain softwares available that can help you do that, and we can show you how to do that as well. And softwares where you can just say, I'm importing pens, right? Click on pens. Do you want a fountain pen? Do you want a ballpoint pen? Do you want a quilling pen? Bang, it says no tariff, or bang, 10% tariff. And it just calculates it for you so you don't have to stress. The same software also tells you how many fit in a container and what they recommend is the right container. The other thing I recommend is a shipping agent. These guys are worth their weight in gold because they can help you get really cheap shipping, and you've got to hunt around and be a bit savvy here. There's also software where you can actually get, it's really cool. It's like the reverse of eBay. You can actually tender out your shipping to people through this software and the shipping agents, and you'll have like 50 emails of people who want to ship your goods, and they'll bid for the lowest price. It's awesome. The other thing is a customs broker who goes hand in hand with a shipping agent. They're very good at advising you what you actually need to watch out for in terms of Australian regulations. You should always do your own background checking and due diligence. But, for example, did you guys know that if you bring in anything with wood in it, you're in big trouble, unless it's fumigated?
Treated.
Yeah. So, pardon me, you want to get that treated. And the reason why you want to get that treated is if Australian customs see your goods and it has wood in it, straight away they ask you, where's the fumigation certificate? If you don't have that certificate, they go into a customs bond. And I've had my goods in a customs bond. Guys, do you think a customs bond, that's a warehouse that the customs own, right, that they put your goods in until you've satisfied their requirements. Do you know how much that place is? It's like 5 times the rate of a normal warehouse, right? They absolutely get you and they rip you off, and that's it. You're a captive market because it's the Australian government and it's just not efficient. So they charge you and you have to deal with it. And the thing I recommend is if you're bringing in wood, get it done in China and get a proper company that does a proper fumigation certificate, because in Australia, it's a lot more expensive. So that's what a customs broker helps you out with. And you want a good one. You don't want someone who just started, who's, it's his first year. You want someone who's done it for years and years. And these guys know everything about everything, and they'll be able to say, oh, you're bringing in that product. Have you got this? Have you considered that? Okay, because the last thing you want, because has happened to me, is bring in 7 containers and customs put in their cargo bond. Like, that kind of stuff can really hurt you. Another great idea is, and sometimes there's situations where you might not realise that your goods may be legally reclassified as another good, and you might be just doing a disservice calling them something where they could be called something else. A really interesting story about this is candles. Now, candles is something that can attract a tariff, right? But what's a candle made out of? 2 things. You've got wax, yep, and the other thing inside it to light it, you light the string or a wick, right? There's no tariff on wax. There's no tariff on string, but there is a tariff on candles. Right? So what a clever importer can do is, if you know this and you've got that experience, is drill a hole in the wax. A wax stick. Let's just call it a wax cylinder for now, right? A wax cylinder, drill a hole in the middle. Import that to Australia. Is there a tariff on that? Okay, then you get a string. You import that to Australia. Is there a tariff on that? Okay, and then you put the 2 together and you now have invented a new item called a... Have you paid tariffs on that? Okay, and the guy next to you has, and what's just happened to his business? He suffers while you dominate the market because you know this. Pretty interesting, right? Probably, and there's a spectrum from one way or to the other. Do you guys want to hear the most brazen idea of reclassification you've ever heard in your life along those lines? Let me see a show of hands. Okay, great. Okay, so shoes. Okay, possibly one of the biggest taxed item in these shoes. I don't know what these shoes would have cost. If they weren't taxed, I probably would have saved myself a few $100s. But at the end of the day, a friend of my father's back in the day had a shipment of shoes. It was, I think, a 40-foot container. He broke it up into 20-foot containers. He ran a business out of... I love this story. He ran a business out of Melbourne. Okay? He shipped one container, 20-foot container, to Sydney. But he only sent left-footed shoes. Then he sent another container, 20-foot, to Melbourne with the right-footed shoes. Well done. And then what happens is he never picked up the goods. Now, do you know what customs do if someone actually doesn't claim goods? Do they throw it out? Customs auction. So he turns up to the customs auction, right, in Sydney, right, and there's a whole container full of left-footed shoes. Do I hear $1,000? No. Why would? How much will people pay for a container with all left-footed shoes? It's useless. Bought it for $10. Then goes to a similar customs auction in Melbourne, puts up his hand, wins it for $10, right? Gets it through customs, and now he ships half the right-footed shoes to Sydney, ships half the left-footed shoes to Melbourne, and he's got shoes, left-footed and right-footed pairs of shoes in Sydney and Melbourne, right? And absolutely dominates the market because he's not paying that sort of tax and the tariffs. Who thinks that's just clever? Okay? Is this a strategy that I recommend you guys follow? Probably not. But it just shows you what is possible. You've got to figure out where you want to fit on that spectrum, right? But that is a way to make an absolute fortune. Okay. I know a good customs broker can also help you defer GST in some cases. And ask your customs broker about that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next part. And this is probably the most interesting part of the presentation because this is really, we're here to make money. We're here to understand how you can grow massively and quickly. And this is the thing I love the most. I am a nut. I'm an absolute nut for numbers and for data and for statistics. And that's really where I can help out. And if you think about it, what you really want is to not be an importer of just the two-man tent, but you want to try the whole range and the whole niche. So what's involved here is to actually have a massive growth as quickly as possible. So let's talk about Samurai pocket bikes. Alex, would you be able to help me with a glass of water, sir? Sure. Thank you very much. Let's talk about Samurai pocket bikes. There you go. You asked me what it looks like. Now, I still don't believe I sold 12,000 of these until today. Right? This is absolutely amazing. I made a fortune on this one item. Now, we go back to this thing, and well done, sir, for remembering. If you got the $420 at the end, I would have just been freaked out. But anyway. But if you have a look here, and the reason why I show this is not to impress you, but to impress upon you the significance of having a variety of items. Because have a look here. I've got the singles and I've got the six packs. Wholesale and retail. See how I've diversified? And I've got the whole niche of all these. These are dirt bikes, these are four-wheeled bikes, these are two-wheeled bikes, this is the entry-level two-wheel bike. Right? And I also had a special bike and all these different types of products that are all branded Samurai. Right? They're all branded Samurai, and I think here's some of the Diablo ones as well. Thank you, sir. So look at that. I mean, what you need to do is be able to monitor. I mean, imagine that think about this. If anyone ever run a business and you have staff, right? What do you do with your lazy staff? Fire them. What would Donald Trump say? You're fired. Right? So you need to be able to bring in the items that are good and fire the ones that aren't. So how do you know? Well, you need to do your costings. And here's an example. And these templates are stuff that I absolutely swear by. And anyone who works with me, as a rule, has to set these up because they're just so damn helpful. You look at some of these items and their costs. Right? And if you have a look at that, the item cost and the freight cost is 10%, the clearing is this price, the warehousing price, and that's it. You can see that all the way through. Starts with the item cost from China, freight, clearing, warehouse, and that you know what the actual total price is. So you need to break it up into the individual units. Why do you break it up into individual units? So you can see exactly where your total costs are. So I don't just actually analyze my total profit, my total sales. You look at your total costs. So I look at this is 25% of my cost came from this item, and this item, and this item, and this item, so that I know that when it actually comes to me leveraging my time, remember leveraging my time, what's the first item I'm going to try and get the factory to reduce the cost in? Which one? Come on, someone knows the answer here. I'm absolutely sure of it. The big piece of the pie, right? So that's the item. That's where I spent $12,000 last week. So if I can get even a 5% reduction on that item, that's $600 a week or 30 grand in a year. $30,000 a year. That's a lot of money for just a 5% reduction. And I know that I'm not going to go to the factory and say, hey, can you reduce the price of ATV01, please? Making me money. This is what leverage is about. You see which soldiers are making the most money, and you strengthen and bolster those soldiers, and you fire the bad ones. Okay, and that's how people grow and grow exponentially. So here's the total profit, right? So I had sales of 67,000. That's irrelevant, right? What if my costs were 100,000? Is that a good business to run? Yes or no? It's a terrible business. So you actually need to measure not just your sales, but your costs, because sales minus costs equals profit. Okay, so have a look at that. $19,000. So yes, I was having a business that was turning over $3 to $5 million a year, right? But these bikes, the business of the bikes, the Samurai, that was $1 million business. Okay, that's a business that in profit makes $1 million. And the only way I did that was by exponential growth strategies. Here's an example of another thing you need to watch for. Here's an example, a screenshot of deposits into my bank account. And I want to put a point out here is that you've got $46,000 deposited. Now there's an issue here. I noticed that there's $46,000 deposited, but 67 sold. So there's a deficiency of 20 grand. What that tells me is that, okay, this week I didn't get much money. Next week there's going to be a stream of cash coming in, because as the accrual matches the cash flow, it's getting a little complex here, but bear with me. As the accrual matches the cash flow, suddenly next week, because there was a deficiency this week, it'll all even out. And that's important, because as I exponentially grow and order more and more and more new items, I need to know when my cash is coming, because in the end, cash is king. Okay, so here's what you need to do, and this is pretty much the crux of my business. Importing can be only 4 decisions, if you want to make it simple. I love things simple. You will order a product. You can only do 4 things with a product. You can order it, reorder it, and when do you reorder it? When it's making you money. Probate it when it's like kind of not, it's on the fence, or kill it if it's just not a successful product. So here's an example of those items broken up by percentage. And I can see that some of these items are very profitable, and as long as they're profitable, I'm going to keep importing them. Can anyone read this? Which of these products here would you say is the one that's making me the least amount of profit? GSM Triple C. And what else is not so high? Great. Now, it does take me time and effort and energy to import GSM XXX and ATV01. So if I don't want to waste my time in future, I can probate these products, and then if in the next cycle, an analysis cycle, they're still doing the same or worse, then I make a decision when it comes to reorder the products. What do I tell the factory in China? I don't want them. But then what do I do with the Samurai bikes? GSD01, what do I do there? 6 packs. See what I'm saying? So you can actually see, here's interesting, if you look at the GSM05, that's the percentage profit, there's 20%, there's 34%. The difference of 14% is attributed to the fact I'm selling retail and wholesale. See? You make less margin, but boy are you pushing quantities. So this is how I do it. Every time, this is how you're going to do it too. Every time you import a new product, you set up a profitability chart, and you see exactly what happens. And here's the thing, you actually need a 1 in 5 strike rate to be a successful importer. You can screw up 4 out of 5 orders. You can import 4 doozies and have 1 winner, and you've still got a profitable business. I'll tell you why. Because you're going to kill the bad ones, and what are you going to do with the good ones? Strengthen them. And in the next 4 months, will they have paid for the other 5? You betcha. And then you have another product, and another product, and another product. And as you get better, you're going to have a better eye for what sells and what doesn't sell. And you can always